No mai, haere mai ki Aotearoa Rugby Pod. Welcome to the Aotearoa Rugby Pod, brought to you by Ashley and Martin Medical Hair Centres. We are now past the 200 episode mark on Aotearoa Rugby Pod. So before we start, a huge thank you to everyone who helped us get this far over the last 6 years. Thanks so much for watching and for supporting us. And we had a hell of a weekend of test footy, didn't we? With France's development team showing there is tremendous depth in French rugby, forcing the All Blacks into a nervous win in Dunedin. Heaps to unpack there with the boys. Australia were lucky to get away with a win against Fiji. The step up will be real against the Lions, and they don't have another warm-up test. And South Africa roll on. How good is Kurt-Lee Arendse? We'll break down the way the Boks backs are stepping up. Also on the show, our Rugby Ready giveaway is back. We'll give away another 4-week training package for you, a family member or friend, to work with All Blacks fitness guru Nick Gill's Rugby Ready team. We'll also have your emails and comments, which are global this week. Got one from Stockholm, Sweden, as well as the in-depth analysis you've come to expect from James Parsons and Bryn Hall. So let's get into it. Brynner in the studio, James in the studio. 200 eps, boys.
People are still watching us, are they? They still they must be doing something right?
They haven't turfed us yet.
Don't give us that fake humbleness. You know damn well you look at that views every week. We all do desperately.
Yeah. We were looking desperately at what the All Blacks are doing right on the weekend, Brynner, and some people were disappointed by the scoreline, I suppose, but what about the fact that it's the first test and they're obviously trying some stuff?
Look, I know that obviously the score probably didn't dictate how I thought the game went. I think our attack was really good. Like, if you think about 3 disallowed tries, especially in the second half when there was a yellow card, it could have been a different story. I think the difference of being up by 8 points to 1 point, predominantly that whole second half, could have been a little bit different in terms of the French maybe have to play a little bit of a different way because, look, they did kick a lot. They kicked long. We went to the contestable game. Aerially, I thought the French were a little bit better in that first half, grabbing the hard balls. Razor kind of talked on it at the back end of that interview. So, yeah, a few things that we'd like to get better in that space. But overall, our attacking side, especially our backs, Jippa, like how we're able to swing together, make 3 or 4 phase play tries off that. So the marrying up and being able to pull trigger, I thought was pretty good from the All Blacks as well.
Mate, I was super impressed with, I suppose their attacking mindset. I thought it was very courageous, especially first test of the year. And most importantly, when the game was in the balance, they didn't go away from it. So what that says to me is, man, they're all rowing in the same direction. They know how they want to play, and they stuck to it, even when I suppose passes weren't going to hands or crossfield kicks weren't, they were bouncing out and putting them under sort of pressure in their own half. But if you look at it from an attacking sense, they had 32% dominant carries. So that's your ability to go through teams, but also tighten the defence to bring in that swing motion that we saw out the back of Beauden Barrett with Will Jordan, Beauden Barrett and co. Being able to float, and as we've seen, it seems to be the go-to thing now to beat this rush defence, isn't it? Is that sort of NRL-style swinging. But you've got to dent that defence to tighten them first. And that's one thing I really liked, is how patient they were to wait for the defence to give the picture. And what I mean by that is, sometimes in the 22, you felt like probably it went 10 phases of just bang, 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 bang. But when they pulled trigger, they finished things off. And if you look at what the coaches have said, the biggest thing they wanted to improve this season is finishing it off. Although not that it would read statistically as not being that accurate of 5, coming away with a penalty or try 5 times out of the 13 visits. But if you look at the 3 disallowed and then the other times there were turnovers, man, at 8 out of 13, you're starting to go, that can win tight test matches. And this was a tight test match that they managed to get across the line. But, yeah, a lot to like in their attack. And I like their mindset. Like, you do sort of feel like there's this change in the guard. And when we've seen, with the ratio in terms of the carry, to kick ratio of the Lions, I definitely felt with the All Blacks, their kicks were right down. And if they were kicks, they were attacking kicks, they were contestable kicks. So definitely, I suppose, a more courageous attacking mindset. What will be crucial for them this weekend is where does that risk versus reward with I suppose the weather conditions looking to be wet in Wellington. It's just getting that fine balance between putting yourself under pressure and putting the opposition under pressure.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be an important point. I think going down in Wellington as well, depending on what the conditions are going to be like, we've got to under the roof you're able to be able to execute with that skill set and drive with dry conditions, but, you know, not too sure what it's going to be looking like. But like I said, you know, they had 29 kicks with, you know, 500 metres, so they did go to that contest, but they didn't get what they probably necessarily wanted in that first half. But there are things in place where I think in the attacking side, great, we're able to attack and like the face play shit, we're able to score, being able to make really good decisions of when to pull trigger. But I think they have got things in place with that kicking game that we saw in the week where the contest was. I think it's just being able to get that 50-50, whether it's a tap back, being able to get up for the ball, because I think in that first half, the French were able to either we weren't getting it in the air, being able to contest, or the loose ball that was on the ground, the French were kind of winning that in that first half against the All Blacks.
It felt like there was a lot of people looking up at the ball coming down. If that makes sense, Jippa. Like I felt when the kick went up, I think they retained 4 out of 10 box kicks or something along those lines, but it didn't feel like there was one person who was just absolutely committing to taking that ball, or maybe that was the French putting them off, I'm not sure.
No, well, I think it's also, again, that risk versus reward, because if you get that jump wrong, you can end up in all sorts of trouble in terms of yellow cards. And if you don't feel like you're in that contest and you're not going to get your leap right, then actually being patient to just make the tackle and then look for a barge effect and as there's sort of retreating cleaners having to come around through the gate. Don't think it's necessarily a bad idea, but I do think if you're going for the contestable game, you are normally looking to have a body in the air to, one, disrupt the ball, and then it's about the hard ball gets and making sure you win more of those hard ball gets than the opposition, which, you know, didn't seem to happen. And I do think, though, it's under the roof, so I'm not sure we're going to see, what was it? It was nearly 1,400 metres, run metres by the All Blacks, you know, to the French's 563. So they were all out attack. And maybe that's under the roof or not. We will see where that, I suppose, penny drops this weekend in Wellington.
From a layman's point of view, watching it, the first half I felt a little frustrated because I suppose we're so used to seeing, I suppose, you look at the Lions, you look at Ireland, and you're seeing these intricate shapes and attack phases and 5 or 6 strike phases in a row with these, you know, pod plays. The All Blacks were just bang, bang, bang. At first I thought it was a bit predictable, but looking at what it achieved, like, it was different.
Well, that's the most important thing, what you just said there. I think we set them up. So, you know, we talk around physicality massively around being able to get over the advantage line. And what that does, it's been able to bring them a little bit tighter. And that's why I thought the All Blacks backs were really good on the weekend. They swung together, but they saw the picture for when the forwards were able to get over the line, whether it was to interplay the tip play or just being able to get over the advantage line with a bit of footwork and good high clean. So, like I said, you know, there were 3 or 4 tries and a couple of that were disallowed as well, that the backs saw the picture and then they were able to pull from that. So, yeah, as you said, you might be thinking, like, why are we not using it wide? Jip talks about it all the time. You've got to be able to win the physicality battle. You've got to be able to bring them nice and tight, so then when you do get the pitches, you've got more of a one-on-one. You're not going up against 2 or 3 or getting that double shoulder, which probably we saw maybe a little bit last year.
But the decision-making to know when to go to the edge, or the Tupou Va'i try, where it's like, OK, they just scored on the edge, so the French are now trying to cover the edge, bang. So I just felt like it was a very assertive, game-driven performance from the All Black game drivers. They knew what they were going to do and they just stuck to task. And I think from an attacking sense, you know, really strong. And you know, even on the defensive side, like, yes, 27 points, but 3 penalties given away. They tackled at 93%. 2 of the tries were just misreads or miscomms. One where they went straight between, I think, Artie and Scott was just a communication error in terms of who had who. And then they got a little bit tight off the scrum and got on the outside of Billy Proctor. You do have to acknowledge that I don't know how much time Will and Billy have spent together, and, you know, Sevu Reece going off and that sort of defensive change may have played into that, you know, because Billy's not one to really get players catching him on the outside. So, again, I just think it's anomalies. You take those away, it was a very, very clean team defensive effort as well.
And I think you've also got to credit the French in terms of the minimal opportunities that they did have. They had 5 entries into the 22, but they scored 3 tries. Lagarik as well, been able to get some penalties through, a little bit of ill-discipline. Even though it wasn't very low, they scored points when they were able to. So, like, you're talking around working on crumbs and being able to have only crumbs. I thought the French were very good in terms of the opportunities that they did have. So they played a lot of football away as well. They kicked very long. They almost kicked about over 1,000 metres. So their game plan was not to be able to play anywhere in the halfway zone. And then I guess with the limited opportunities they did get, they're able to score some points and making it really, really close. And the fact that 3 tries were disallowed, more so 2 in that second half. The difference of probably having a 1-point lead that whole second half instead of 8 points, where you probably have to chance your arm a little bit. They probably weren't going to kick as long. They would have to be able to hold on to the ball, and then there we would be able to maybe get some decisions around breakdown turnovers, or they make some mistakes. So I just think those 2 tries from the TMO, which has probably been a hot point, not just in New Zealand, Ross, but probably all around in this international week. But it may be a very good learning to, I guess, the All Blacks to have an understanding that it is international rules now. It isn't a Super Rugby, and I guess the TMO is going to become more of a bigger point, I believe, in this international series.
They were busy.
In all games.
In all games.
It wasn't just the All Blacks game. They certainly played a part in a lot of games over the weekend.
And in the most part, they got the decisions right according to the law. So I suppose that's to be commended.
I think they got them all right.
Yeah.
But when you look at the way Super Rugby runs it, and I know people hate it when Kiwis go on about changing these things, it's just an easier watch, isn't it?
But don't forget, like, Morgan Turanui and the Aussies were up in arms. I think it was about a Sever Reece knock-on, like, only a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I said at the time, we have to accept that there's going to be time wasted if we're going to use it, and there's going to be things that are going to be missed if we don't.
Yeah.
There is no perfect science. There is never going to be a perfect science to it. And I think either way, like, people will have their mind made up, but they weren't wrong.
Yeah.
Maybe the only one I would potentially say hasn't been policed is Tossi's front running.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, that happens every week.
Yeah.
All over the world. It's the first time I've actually seen it policed, but I actually think, the call was right. Because if you compare the two of Newell before Will Jordan's first try, he almost comes from a wide angle and he just cuts a down line, and he's always looking at the ball, not so much the defender, whereas, I suppose they probably felt Tossi was more looking at the defender rather than trying to receive a ball, so it wasn't as... So it just shows that full commitment to look like you're receiving the ball. We talk about it all the time.
Yeah.
That's what draws a defender in. To create the space as we sort of create that first try, and making sure, throughout the whole 80 minutes, and my mate here with the Crusaders, they're the best at it, they just don't go away from it. And it's no wonder that Newell's the example, because it's just in their DNA. When
you were in that position, what are you taught? I mean, you're not necessarily in that position, are you? But, but what are you taught, Jippa, about how much you can engage someone in front of you?
Well, I think it's more, it depends who you're looking at, because the attackers taught things, to really try and get on that inside shoulder on a sharp line so that they bite in. But as a defender as well, you're also comfortable there, because if they come on that sharp line, you can make a tackle, but then you've got to have the ability to push off if the ball goes out the back. And there, I suppose, I think the French defender got caught too tight, and then the ball wasn't released early enough, so Tossi just got in the road there, and he does touch him, but because he's in front of the ball, the French defender didn't have that opportunity to get off, so it's probably the right call. It was just a mistiming thing, but I don't think you'd want to be as tight as the French defence were, like they were almost holding hands, which then made him panic. But definitely it affects the chain further out in the defence line, so because he couldn't get off, that meant that player couldn't get off, which potentially is why they've brought it back. And if you look at, Fletcher Newell's one, you look at the speed that he's running into that, so, he's pretty... His commitment and his intent to be able to go to that line, it's very hard to... There's a genuine threat. So whereas with Tossi, it was maybe just like a little bit of, maybe... Slightly in front of the... Didn't get the right line or the right time, and so then you're kind of in that position where you're indecisive, and then the defence is able then to try and not milk it, but it does have a play with the guy on the outside. Because if you actually do look at the clip, Fletcher Newell's intent and the way that he ran with the ball, especially with his ball with his hands up, just how the difference, have a look at the difference between Tossi and Fletcher Newell's line and being a really genuine option. Technically, which we've probably found with TMOs and I guess with how international rugby is, it's very technical. So if you're not going to get the really minute details of the technical, whatever it may be, attack, defence, breakdown or whatever, I think that's just maybe the difference that we probably haven't seen in Super Rugby and the difference in the international game. Let's talk about those debutants and the All Blacks. Fabian Holland in particular. Special. Well, I think we're talking off air and obviously his numbers and being very Brody Retallick, like Jippa was saying, but like for a kid that it's his debut, Scott Barrett goes off obviously with an Achilles injury and was a little bit obviously injured in that second half, but 80 minutes, your first test match,
very, very tight in terms of like what entailed in that test match. And the line-out, Jip, I think that's probably the best I've seen our line-out, how fluid and I guess how easy it looked with him. And obviously he's a very tall man, but not too sure obviously with the amount of work that would have been done behind the scenes, not just him. But yeah, for someone that played 80 minutes for his first test match, and alongside, like I thought Ollie Norris has been able to get that big scrum penalty to be able to win the game, So this coaching staff has a lot of belief because Duplessis Kirifi goes on very early, the 50th minute, so they must be seeing a lot in terms of what they're seeing at training to be able to give these guys opportunities to perform well, because I think the four of them did very, very well considering what kind of test match it was.
And I think that's what I meant before, like with using their attack as an example, but I just thought it was a courageous performance by everyone. Just they came in with a plan and like with substitutions and like they were very, I think the words assertive is what I used before and for the game drivers, but I think as the coach as well, they're very assertive, making decisions. They backed their players, they backed the players who they chose, and in the end it got them across the line with, debutants coming off the bench playing critical roles and getting this result.
Yeah, and also considering, you think like the people that did go off, Severis goes off in the first minute and then Damien McKenzie comes on and plays outstanding at fullback. Now, it'll be very interesting to actually see who does play 15.
Yeah.
Whether Will Jordan does stay on the wing, scoring tries as he does. But I thought Damien's ability to be able to, his counter-attack, his decisiveness when he does have the ball, especially if we're winning that gain line percentage and getting over the advantage line, because you've got Beauden Barrett, you've got Damien McKenzie, Will Jordan, Billy Proctor had some nice touches. So the distribution and ability to be able to get the ball away with what we saw in those kind of phase play strikes and ability to score collectively as a back unit. Look, I thought Damien was excellent when he was on at fullback, so
I don't know
see
how
where they do go.
I don't know how you can change anyone with the tech numbers. Like those are, yes, I know the scoreline wasn't 50-20, it could have been, but from a statistical point of view, it was a very, very clinical attacking display.
Yeah.
I do want to come back to Fabian Holland, because I on debut to go 80 minutes is amazing, At his home ground, like there's a lot of emotion that goes into it. But like, so he was, and I know he's played 80 minutes, but a lot of other players played 80 minutes. He was third in carries behind Ardy, obviously, and I think it was Will Jordan was just one carry ahead of him. He had 13 carries, 100% tackle success, 16 tackles, which was the most in the team. And then this is what blew me away. It was 40 rucks hit with those defensive and attacking numbers, and he barely hit any defensive rucks. So most of those are attacking rucks that he's just cleaning and providing the lightning quick ball that the All Blacks had at 62%. So all these factors play into allowing them to be able to see the pitches defensively because it buys time and then you can exploit. And he just had a massive, massive day at the office and a lot of big, big plays that probably, you go unnoticed in terms of how sharp he cleans a corner that traps three players, that shortens their defence, that allows that space. Those sorts of things in his clean-out game was just, methodical. And a lot of the time, his carries were the carries where it's just a wall of white jerseys and he just ducks his head and just gets straight into it. So, look, and we're not surprised. I don't think anyone's surprised. Everyone knows he's built for test match rugby. And, depending on Scott Barrett's injury, I think he's got plenty more minutes to offer. Going forward.
Another bold thing that I saw in that game was, I think everyone saw it, Beauden Barrett being willing to go down to the final second of those kicks at goal. Like
the ref even asked him. The referee was like, "Can you see that?" And he's like, "Yeah,
I can see it." And then he
his
nails
heart rate's
it.
just
Probably the best goal-kicking performance we've seen from Beauden in a long time.
Yeah.
They were from out wide and he was taking his time. It was like he was in an NBA game and you were using up the entire shot clock. It was...
Well, I completely agree. It is probably the best goal-kicking display in a test match.
He's kicked very well for the Blues this year.
Yeah, because obviously, Geordie Barrett's been in and around when he has been selected at 12 that he'd be doing the goal-kicking, but I think we needed it. We needed those.
We did.
We needed those kicks over and take up the time again. Go 0.5 to be able to see how close you can get it, because I think with whatever that process, with what it looked like, he had a very good kicking display, which in the end, probably got us over the line in terms of how many. Well, I don't know what it was, 5 out of 5 or 100%. So
But again, I just think it goes back to that assertive nature and mindset they had. Like he just knew. He was confident. He'd done the preparation. He knew what needed to be done, and nothing shows it more as well defensively. 3 penalties.
Yeah.
Test match footy. Give away 3 penalties.
Yeah.
That is so disciplined.
Yeah.
And if you look at the things the All Black coaches wanted to focus on was finishing off and the discipline, not to give teams anything. And man, I know the game was close. I think through decision making and the right calls were made, but it stemmed the momentum and the flow of the game. Yeah, I don't know. I left probably the only question mark is the aerial battle is where they probably won in the hardball games. Other than that, it was a pretty clinical display.
182 carries, considering 9 turnovers with the amount of ball on hand. You look at probably the Northern Hemisphere at the moment with the Lions, they're having a high passing ratio and holding on to the ball, but they've got massive turnovers, which we probably saw against the Waratahs in wet and dewy conditions. So very good.
There was a few suggestions the field was saturated prior to kickoff, but hey, it is a Lions tour.
Yeah, you got to do what you got to do. And maybe the rugby teams need to think more like cricket teams and doctor the pitches.
I actually heard an argument the other day that they should have track conditions like horse racing, you know, like a heavy 8. I was like, I don't know how that would change it.
We'll get Tony Grigg down there with a good key in the pitch.
Old key.
Yeah, that'd be amazing. It was the 1-to-8 kicking passing ratio was interesting on the weekend because the Boks, the Lions, and the All Blacks all had 1 kick to 8 passes.
I feel like there is a changing.
All had 1 to 4. Like the top teams are holding on to the ball.
I feel like it's changing. Like, there's a definite change in mindset around, you know, the kick counter, even the type of kick. Like Delande, his short kicking game, you know, not that he hasn't had it previously, but he's pulling it out this season more than not. And you know, whether I can't remember who scored the try, it was Creel or maybe whether he's in front of the kicker or not, it doesn't really matter. That was a hell of a deft touch. We saw it against the Barbars. You know, so not only can they expose you in the air, but these. So I suppose what I'm trying to say is even when they kick, it's attacking. And that was the same we saw from the All Blacks. And you get the sense that, you know, teams may get left behind, and all you need is a couple to stick. And the confidence to build, and that's why, you know, it's going to be hard to see it in Wellington because of the conditions. But if, as we've seen with the Springboks, like it's, you know, it looks to be the way to break down these rush defences.
Well, if you look at the Springboks and how many kicks they had on the weekend, they had 21. Which traditionally we just think it's, you know, 30, 40. So like they're making a really conscious effort to be able to hold on to the ball. And you look in that first half against the Italians, they probably used a bit more brute force and were a lot more direct, but they're wanting to hold on the ball, putting in the attacking kicks, whether it's a crossfield kick or little kicks in behind by Delande or even Fussy, and being able to have Willemse back as well. They've got an array of kicking people that can be able to put it in behind you. So I think it is great to see in terms of the international game, because for so long, probably the last World Cup cycle was always based in and around the contestable game. Kick long, slow it really down with the caterpillar. So, those teams, you know, Ireland were probably the people that probably did start it a little bit in terms of maybe 3-4 years ago. But, a lot of top quality teams now, whether the All Blacks, hopefully they continue this role that we do have, holding on to the ball. But like I said, the South Africans, very scary. I believe that we're going to see them very shortly, that they've got a lot of ways that they can beat you, especially with those attacking kicks, and hold on to the ball a lot more this year.
You look at their backs, you mentioned Delande, obviously we're big fans of Delande on the show.
And Malcolm Marx.
As you all know, Malcolm Marx. But Kurt-Lee Arendse, mate.
So the attack I get, like, beautiful from our boy Marx, though, to just draw the defender out and he scores that try doing what we know Arendse does. But to stay in the fight, like, all the Italian winger needed to do is dive over. But he stays in the fight and just gets enough, just knocks his leg out, and that's a no try. But then the kick coverage catches pretty much everything on the full, even attacking kicks. His speed defensively and covering that backfield is second to none. I don't know, like, because for so long it's been Kolbe, you know, and I'm not saying Kolbe's not there, but I'm just saying both of them now are turning into, and Arendse for me is almost dominating world rugby on the wing at the moment in terms of what he does off the ball to allow him to do what we see on the ball.
And I think just the depth that they're growing as well. Like Vandenberg, you know, I don't know how many halfbacks they've got in their country. Grant Williams is probably their number one and probably hasn't played a lot, but look, the way that he played on the weekend, they just continue to keep building depth. Willemse is back as well. Like, I know Fussy's been playing really well, and you know, that's going to be obviously depending on who they want to pick there, but geez, him one-on-one, step off both feet, big man, good into contact area, can kick long. So look, they're building depth. They're building depth for, I guess, coming to New Zealand, but it's very scary in terms of the World Cup cycle, where there are a lot of players in this 12 to 24 months have had a lot of opportunities to be able to be put on that Springboks jersey. Yeah,
if you put Kurt-Lee Arendse and Arendse and Kolbe, and I was thinking about this before, as a combination, I mean, it's hard to imagine there's a better combination. The only one I think is up there with them is probably BL Berry and Damien Penaud, because Penaud is outrageous. And I know that the latter aren't playing, they're taking a bit of a rest. But if you were going to make a comparison, what is the best wing combo in the world out of those two?
I've just pumped them up, so I've got to have Arendse in there. But I think Pinot, I don't know, that's a hard, oh man, Kolbe as well. I can't answer. I'd need to do a bit more deep dive into that.
Yeah.
I'm big on Arendse at the moment. Maybe it's just familiarity and it's just...
Well, he's epic. He's always epic.
But it was, for me, it was the defensive efforts. Like, as everyone knows, like, I get mocked all the time for work off the ball chat. I should make T-shirts. I know I've said it all the time. But it's incredible. The ground he covers off the ball to free up and allow their counter-attack or not to put them under pressure defensively and get marks. It's very, very strong.
On a side note, one thing I did enjoy seeing in the 44th minute was when the bomb squad came on and there's fireworks going. I don't know if you guys saw that.
They dropped the bombs.
Yeah, just saw the old fireworks goes. Oh, that's something new.
Yeah, I'd say that's
something new.
Yeah.
But again, like, you know, they've got that side as well. Their bomb squad that does comes on very early. You know, 4 big changes, they do it straight away. So that's, if you're an All Blacks team or anywhere around the world, you might be in the fight for, 45 minutes. Not probably the Italians, but more so when they do come to New Zealand or play in that rugby championship. You've got to be able to stay on the whole time with the Boks. So the depth, the way that they are playing, they're evolving under Tony Brown. They're a scary beast, Ross, right now. So
where would you go? Arendse and Kolbe or Pinot and Bielbieri?
It's just so hard. For me personally, I love watching Kolbe and Arendse just because I think the fact that what they do, they're collectively, both of them, all the hard work off the ball, the defensive players that they've touched on, they can beat each other. They can't beat each other, but they can beat the other defenders, being able to use footwork and their brute strength. They're not big.
It's the aerial game as well for small dudes.
That's one thing I was just going to touch on. Like, they're not very big, but for whatever reason, they get themselves in a really good position to be able to get it for the ball. And I think how they do it is they just attack it.
Yeah.
They don't care about their body. So you're talking around bravery and courage, because that's what it takes to be able to, I guess, win the ball back. Not very big men, but for whatever reason, they're able to win the ball early. So I'd probably go with those two boys.
Recency bias heavily in there.
Yeah.
But I would agree in the current state.
Yeah.
But you watch some of the performances in the top 14 and...
Yeah, there's no wrong answer here.
There isn't. There isn't. Neither answer is safe for social media. That's all I will say.
South Africans will love it. If you want the French following as much as we do the South Africans.
Yeah.
But no, like I marked it down as a point I wanted to bring up because I just, so often it's the forward pack that allows the platform, and I'm big on that. But man, some of the work they're doing, and I just think it's all about, they're probably not predicted to be an Israel Folau in terms of their aerial game, but somehow they are.
Yeah.
They get the ball back more often than not, and they barely ever lose it if it's their role to catch it defensively.
Now, if you, a family member or a friend, needs to get into rugby shape, we have the giveaway that will supercharge them for this season. Along with All Blacks trainer Dr. Nick Gill's Rugby Ready team, we're trying to get the rugby community, whether you're a player or fan, fit and strong. We're stoked to announce that the weekly Rugby Ready giveaway is back, and we're giving away 4 weeks of free training each week to one lucky listener of the Aotearoa Rugby Pod. If you want in, it's simple. Just DM Rugby Ready on Instagram with the code ARP and tell them why you'd love to win. Each week, one winner will receive 4 weeks of free access to the Rugby Ready Perform membership with full access to all of Dr. Nick Gill's pre-season, in-season, off-season and specialty programs to help take your game to the next level. We'll be announcing a new winner right here every week, so get your message in and make it count. And of course, if you miss out, you can get 75% off memberships through ARP by going to the link below and using the QR code. So please do that. Dr. Nick Gill knows exactly what he's been talking about. He's won World Cups, he's worked with the best athletes in the world, so get on board with that if you've got the chance. Let's talk a little bit about the Australians getting on board with defending the Lions. Because when you look at what happened against Fiji, you do wonder, Brenna, whether they're going to be able to handle it.
Yeah, it was a little bit disappointing. But then that's nothing to take away from the Fijians. Like, they probably should have won that game. If Harry Wilson doesn't score that try, then it's really tail between your legs in terms of what the Australians did going into a test match against the Lions. But look, I think Jip's probably going to go a little bit deeper on this, but I talked around it last week around just their defence. Now, I think it's one area where I think they're going to have to improve massively, because with the way the Lions are attacking at the moment, and probably a little bit different in wet conditions and against the Waratahs, but with how flat they do play, with the amount of block plays and people that ask questions, whether it's nice and tight, whether it's out on the edge, even their scrum and their line out attack, they ask a lot of questions. So defensively, I just think that's one area where they're going to have to be able to be a lot better. And I think the counter-attack of the Fijians on the weekend, geez, any chance they had, through the counter-attack or kind of a lost ball, they were able to really pounce in there. And I think the Lions have shown that as well. They want the ability to be able to score tries off counter-attack. You look at probably Matt Hansen and James Lowe in that Reds game, I believe, when they were able to score points off that. So I think defensively, one big effort in terms of what they need to improve is probably there. And Jip's probably go a little bit deeper as to why.
Yeah, look, I just was surprised with some of the defensive aggressiveness is probably what I'd say. Like, Fiji are a big forward pack, big back line, strong ball carriers. I get it, okay? And if I can remind everyone around the dominant carry stat and where it normally sits for you to have a clinical game was the Chiefs versus Moana Pacifica. They were about 36% in that game, and we saw how that can impact and how clean you can attack off the back of it. Fiji were at 38.5%. Against the Wallabies. Like, not only was the carry, but the clean was vicious, and the ball was 77%. It was lightning quick ball. That's so high. Yep. Like, that is like the fact that they didn't score more was probably a credit to the scramble D of the Wallabies, and or I suppose skill execution of the Fijians, probably just pushing things a little bit too hard. But if I use the Rayasi try just before the break, there are 4 Wallaby defenders almost backpedaling, and for people that don't know, we call it jockeying in rugby speak, but you're basically backpedaling to use the sideline as your friend, to then once you get one-on-one, you go for the kill. They were backpedaling, and Rayasi had 4 Wallaby jerseys in front of him and somehow scored. Like, not once did their mindset go, right, we've got 4 of us, let's just carry him out. But they held off, then he bet 1, bet 2, try. So that concerned me in the sense that, man, are they not reading the pitches, or are they just worried about his hot feet? Or I'm not too sure. Like, he's good, but to beat 4 defenders that press hard on you is going to be extremely hard to do, and probably force you into a kick and or a loose offload. And it just got the sense that the Lions are going to play. Yep. They need to sort this out. And they need to be able to bring a presence defensively that allows them to pressure some skills, because they just didn't do that on the weekend, and it nearly cost them the game. Had the TMO not been as sharp as he was, Fiji win that game. Yeah. And then they're in real trouble. So I think there's that element defensively, and then 12 entries, 3 times. Coming away with points is, if they are to beat the Lions, you're going to need to be around that 6, 7, potentially 8, if you're going to get that many opportunities in the 22. So just a little bit of inaccuracy, and maybe it's just, they haven't had a lot of time to prepare, and, maybe not confident in the systems, but I just wasn't expecting it. I don't know, I was really excited for Sunday afternoon. I was like, this will be really interesting, to probably work out how this Lions tour is going to go. Joe Schmidt did say, potentially, they've all had their eyes, not him, obviously, because he's not like that, but maybe the players, they were watching, the super squads during the week, and maybe, their full focus wasn't on Fiji and maybe looking to what's next rather than what's in front of them now. Yeah,
probably disappointing that is their last hit out before they are going to see the British and Irish Lions.
That's crazy in itself, isn't it?
It is, and
a few injuries.
You're going to be not nervous, but I mean more so it's probably actually a good stake in the ground for them, knowing that we're actually probably not where we need to be. So, they'll be able to work and be able to go through combinations and training, but you just you need to be able to get that feeling. Like, probably seen with the British and Irish Lions, like, they're playing so many games, so many guys are going to be able to get the combinations right. Now, I get that Joe Smith's been there for a year or so, a year and a half, and been able to have the nucleus of the players that you'd like to think that have played and had those conversations collectively, coaches and players and management. But, I think for them, they'll be reviewing pretty hard, and I guess, the British and Irish Lions are here, but we're going to have to be a lot better with the things that Jip touched on, the defensive pressure that they need to be able to put on this Lions team. Because if you look at that Reds game in the early part of the week, when Finn Russell is flat out the line and they're getting very quick ball, they're going to be very, very hard, and they're going to have a field day against the Australians.
But their skill set to read defence as well. Like, I want to highlight the try before half-time by Van der Merwe against the Reds, because Jamison Gibson Park switches back blindside, hits the second attacker, so there's blindside flankers inside, hits the second attacker. They hold their feet. Like, this is just like a perfect example of simple rugby will always win if against a defence that's not quite, on the job. They hit that second defender, runs a nice inside line, like a genuine inside line that holds that defence, and then they just catch and pass. Boom, square hips, bang, catch and pass, try in the corner. Like, simple things done well, but then they can have the Finn Russell. And that's the thing that they need to be worried about is this Lions team can skin you. It is the best of the best. Through you, around you, do the simple things, and their ability to read defences and make the right decision is second to none. And I think that try is a perfect example of if you're passive defensively, they will just whip you off.
And I think as well, they want to hold on to the ball. Now, whether that's what they're going to do through the Test match series, maybe they might have that little bit less in terms of the pass and the way they do hold on the ball. I think they do have the ability to have the adjustments in game to be able to say if they're not getting it right there, or if there's a high turnover rate, which we've probably seen in a lot of these games. 19 against the Waratahs, probably the best against the Reds, but previously against Argentina, massive error rate. So if you're wanting to be able to put teams under pressure, you've got to put their skill set under pressure. And they're making turnovers, being able to do that. So if they're going to be passive, then that turnover rate's probably going to go a little bit down because their skill set's so good in terms of the 3v4, the 4v3, the block plays that when they do get it right, it's really hard to read. So I just think Joe Schmidt and that defensive group have just got to be able to think of a way. Yes, the collision area probably close to the ruck is going to be really important because then that stunts that momentum. You're able to get your line set a little bit wider, the connectivity that you can have with your players, the talk between each other to be able to know who you're on. Because if they don't get that right, I think like Jippa was saying, they can kick. Finn Russell can put a kick across. They can do a little attacking kicks, whether from its 9 to most of their back line through 15. And then they've also got, probably their set piece as well. Jip, that scrum penalty they did have against the Waratahs was probably the difference. But I know it's a young, inexperienced Waratahs team, but to still have that set piece dominance would be good for Andy Farrell to get that.
I'll tell you what, if Jamison Gibson Park and Finn Russell get 77% lightning quick ball, it's good night news.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
It'll be 50. They will not miss. Like, that is, like, people might say, we weren't as hard on the All Blacks when it was a close result. But the reason is, statistically, it's all there for them to control and a couple of defensive. Whereas here, you've got to do that over 80 minutes. That's a big stat to pull down.
Yep.
And you probably want it in the 50s. And at 77, and they've got 39% of the time they've got dominant carries. I mean, you're a halfback. Yeah. That is music to your ears.
You're playing on top of it. And with Jamison, with the way they hit, even Alex Mitchell as well. Alex Mitchell is very good in terms of being able to stop in and around the ruck and being able to, if there's a weak defender there or he's seen a little left or right, doesn't matter which side of the ruck, he's very good in and around that. So, as a 9, you can do whatever you want. You can be able to have a little taxi, have a little play and being able to chuck a ball flat, have a snipe yourself, or being able to get the ball out to Finn Russell, who then has that attack outside him in terms of the down hard lines. You've got Bundy Aki, Tui Pelotu, you've got Van der Merwe, you've got obviously, or Jones. I thought Jones has been great in those last 2 Test matches.
Bundy Aki went over Paisami in the Reds game.
Yeah.
He carried him 15 metres and they scored. Like, that's what I mean. Like, if Finn's not pulling any magic tricks, he's coming down channel 2 and he's not planning on being stopped by the first defender.
Yeah. How old is Bundy now? He must be in his mid-30s, is he?
Yeah, he'd be 34.
Yeah, 34, 35 maybe.
34.
Yeah.
Ageless. Yeah.
Well, yeah. But that's going to be interesting. They're going to be very interested to see what kind of midfielding pairing they do go because I think
he has to be there.
But I think Tui Pelotu and Jones, their connection with Finn Russell, let's not underestimate, and the fact that Kinghorn is at 15, who you might think.
I think Arki has to be at 12.
I agree because I think
the way he's played.
Yeah, and I think also with Andy Farrell, probably the way that they do want to play. Bundy Aki would probably be one of the main people that you'd want in there. But look, the depth that they have in that midfielding ranks. Not even talk about Ringrose, who's had a good start to the tour. So you're going to be very interested to see come Test 1 who that makeup's going to be. If they're going to go for the country and I guess the combinations of people that do play together, or just I guess the best man for the job of who they think can do their job very well.
Yeah.
They've had enough time together now.
Yeah.
They're not Ireland and Scotland. These are the best players in the world.
Yeah.
They can make adjustments and get to know each other pretty quick.
It's amazing how quickly a Lions tour gets on top of you, eh? Like,
I know, I
every
was
3-4
just saying
days.
before, like and I'm talking about the Reds game. Well, they've played the Tars, you know, like they're about to play the Brumbies. It is quite hard to keep up with what's relevant, but it is actually hard to find themes on the Lions because of how many changes are happening between the games.
I suppose until you get to that first test.
That's what you'll know.
Yeah, and I'm wondering, you know, are they saving it? But you'd have to think they are.
I think
saving
that RG
it,
lost them the world of
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Like, they have been so razor sharp, really, since hitting Aussie soil. Like it's been quite.
Yeah. But you'd have to think that they're not playing all their cards. You know, listen to Sam Warburton actually on one of the podcasts that he did that. The whole time in that kind of tour match, they were able to play off 10. They were playing off 10, but once they knew that they were going to get to the test matches, they said we're actually going to tighten things up and go off 9. So, you know, you'd have to think there might be a little bit of gamesmanship around that, but, you know, I think the way that they've
got to be real careful.
I think, but I think that the way they are playing, it's Ireland. They're looking exactly like Ireland in terms of the way they are playing. So, you know, there might be a few varieties that they might see that are trends throughout the Australian Test series, but look, I think they're going to attack, which I think is great for us to be able to watch. And I'm really enjoying watching them.
Now, the amazing thing about Ireland, and I suppose will be about this team as well, is that they have the capacity to play in so many ways on attack, isn't it? Like, so you kind of feel like you could show all your cards. Doesn't matter. There are so many cards. How do you know?
I think he talks about this a lot. You've got to stop it. Like
You know what's coming.
You know what's coming.
You've still got to make the right decision.
Yeah. You've got to stop it.
Is it going out the back? Is it going short? Is it going inside? Tell you what, one positive about Australia, actually, just because it sounds like I've been a bit captain negative on them, but defence does win championships, was I like their little inside balls. They got a lot of pay over the gain line with the forward pods. They'd hit the middle pod and they dropped it back on the inside. So often everyone just sort of gets a little bit lazy on that player because they don't think... so, again, I don't know if they're setting up to be able to create more freedom against the Lions, but it was a definite tactic. They went inside more often than not, and they got right in behind the advantage line of the Fijians, so maybe something to look out for.
Now, we've had an email come through for Jippa in particular. So, Carl Martin from Cornwall. Hi, Ross. Hope you had a good break. Thank you. I did. I have a slight jab at Jippa here. He loves Marcus Smith, and I just can't understand why. Don't get me wrong, he's easy on the eye with the ball in hand, but his game management in D isn't up to international standards. At 15, his D is all at C. He's had his chance with England and Quins, and they lose too many games with him at the helm. England look better with Finn at 10. Talk to us about Marcus Smith and being in the Lions 23.
Well, I think if and this does happen sometimes, you know, I remember the show as the full show, and it may get edited out. So, like, I will, you know, put that little disclaimer in there. But I'm a big fan of Marcus Smith on attack at first receiver as a first 5. I agree. Fullback doesn't work for him, especially defensively. Aerially, it's just not it just hasn't worked. But I like the idea of the role he came off the bench in 23, replacing Russell late. And if attacking mindset is their go, there's no better person to inject themselves into the game. He is one of the best attackers. Like, he has the ability to hold people up, that creates space, or he goes himself. Defence, like there's many first 5s over the international rugby and club rugby that aren't the best defenders. There's plenty of ways to hide them. Fullback, no, there's not. But there's plenty of ways to hide a first 5. Where there'll be an issue, and the balance of the 23 is, you know, if a fullback went down early, he would have to go there. So that's a consideration. I don't think Finn's ever played 15, and I don't imagine he'd ever relinquish the reins of any team when he's wearing the 10 jerseys. So I get it. I definitely get it, but I never said he needs to be starting 15. I think he needs to be starting 10.
Yeah,
and I think if that's in terms of the way they do play, I've touched on in terms of Finn Russ, they're a different team because of how his attacking mindset is to be able to play flat at the line. Marcus Smith is very similar. You give him those numbers that we just touched on in terms of they can be able to get over the advantage line, then he's a different person. But I think also that number 23 role was pretty big. Like, I think, you know, with Finn Smith, probably can't cover 15. he's just an out-and-out 10. So if you're looking in terms of the number 23 role, you know that Finn Russell's going to be the guy. If you get an injury probably in that 15, 20 minutes, you want to like for like, your Marcus Smith probably comes there. And the fact that if there is an injury in the fullback realms as well, with King Horn or whoever maybe at fullback, Keenan, then he has the ability to have that utility role, which we've probably touched on with the All Blacks. We've talked around how much utility you need, loose forwards, outside backs, who their number 23 role is, and Finn probably, no, not Finn, sorry, Marcus just probably fits into that a little bit better than Finn Smith.
Speaking of positional stuff, actually, Sua'ali'i's wasted at centre for me.
Yeah.
I just think he doesn't get that time and space, and I totally get, he's unbelievable at fullback, and maybe it seems he's too expensive to put on the wing. But I just think somehow Aussie have got to create time and space for him. He's still playing well. He's a great centre. I'm just, in terms of what Israel Folau did for the Wallabies, I think he can do something similar, in particular on attack. Maybe defensively they can keep him in the midfield, but I just don't think, from what we saw in the Waratahs, and when he gets time and space, he's pretty hard to stop.
Yeah.
And he's just not getting, and he's not going to get that time and space against the Lions if he's in the midfield.
Trying to make up some ways to be able to get him in the game, whether it's off a kick-off, you can put him in the middle of the field and he can be able to get up and tap the ball, or whether if it's off 10 and Lolasia wants to do a contestable kick in the middle of the field, he's going to be one-on-one with a fullback. So that's a big part of the game, I think, early, that he'd be really good. When we saw him on the wing, 50-50 balls, he's got a league background and is very good in and around that area. So I do agree with Jip in terms of the attacking side. How can you make him be able to get more of a one-on-one or some space to be able to try and use the ability that he does have? Because I think at the moment, even though he did some very good distribution skills, I think he was very good on the weekend. He was able to put his outsides away to be able to score tries. I think it was McWright's try, actually. He was able to put
he draws
put
attention.
him away.
Don't get me wrong. He's going well at centre. I don't know. Watching the Tars, when he had time and space against some very, very strong defence systems, he still managed to come out the other side and create. I don't know. It just seems like, the Ferrari's halfway out of the garage. Let's get it right out there.
And so the spot is wing, because you're going to select Tom Wright, aren't you?
Oh, you have to, but maybe they mix and match. I don't know. Back three's back three these days. There's so much chopping and changing. It doesn't really matter what number you wear. You can create things that works to everyone's strength, and maybe he's the best option at centre. But somehow, even if he's wearing 13, an attack, it would be great. We see Billy Proctor drop to the edge a lot for the Hurricanes, and he's amazing out there. Is there something that he can hit out there? He's so good that he can play international centre straight away, which is quite phenomenal. I just think he can have a bigger impact, and he can win games, change games from wing or fullback, in my opinion.
Yeah. I was talking the other day to Earl Curtin, who is the assistant coach in the 95 team, and he was talking about the way they use Jonah. And, they might only give him the ball 6 times, but it's about finding 6 times to give him the ball where he can do everything he can do.
100%.
And outside of that, utilising his skills as an off-ball runner and those kind of things, but using him correctly. And I feel like Sua'ali'i is a give the ball to Sua'ali'i in the right place kind of guy too.
Yeah, well, that comes back to, I guess, the attacking coach in terms of being able to put him in the best position possible. You know what I mean? So I think, being able to, whether it's being able to off a line-out strike, you put him in a particular area, whether it's a second ball carrier or being able to have a one-on-one, depending on where it kind of is. So I think the challenge is how can you get him into the game? I touched on early. It's a great game, I guess, to be able to, win it, to be able to influence, with how good he is early and being able to win the ball back. But yeah, look, one-on-one, we saw it at league. I know probably our viewers didn't watch him play in league, but geez, any time that he had ball in hand, one-on-one, being able to bowl over people, he's a pretty special talent. So hopefully the Australians can use a way to get him into the game a little bit more.
Because you just imagine him on that swing play, and the Tars used it a lot. Him swinging from a blind, there's a lot coming at you, and you create that separation between attacker and defender. Yeah. And he can isolate anyone, he'll beat them.
That's quite a natural for rugby league player too, isn't it?
100%.
That swing around the corner.
Yeah.
Cotton Betty did it, under Dave Rennie, and I just feel it unleashed their attack. We've spoken about the Irish wingers, they do the same. Look, the Wallaby wingers are fine. I just think maybe it's him and Len Ekitau, who I thought was amazing at second 5, is on attack sometimes Len, who can play centre, moves to centre, and he's in that second 5 role where he can play that sort of swing, row out the back of Len Ekitau or something. I don't know. Maybe I'm getting fixated now on the jersey number he wears, but I just think he needs to create that separation if we can create that separation, I'm a Wallaby all of a sudden.
You're in Dave Rennie's coaching team.
But if you can create that separation for someone like him, he doesn't need too many invites.
I've got another question for you from the email. This time, not from Cornwall. This one's from Stockholm, Sweden, from David Norzoy. Before the ball carrier gets to the ball, sometimes close to the line, we'll see the ball carrier as a big teammate who latches on to help him drive forward. It seems like a very hard thing to stop. Is it legal to latch onto someone and go forward in Jippa, to be the two of you at once?
It used to be, you'd see, especially Springboks, they'd pre-latch in Super Rugby, and it was, as a defender, you're like, here we go. There's pretty much only one option, and they're coming to go over the top of you, basically. And so then sides used to attack the ball carrier and the latcher, so you'd almost tackle the latcher out of there and back yourself to isolate that ball carrier to get turnover. Then there was a rule adjustment that you couldn't pre-latch. So you couldn't pre-latch, and then obviously a lot of the time the latcher would get ahead and just create that separation, sort of like a maul when they get penalised in the maul, that you sort of creating that separation that could sort of slingshot. So now it's, you can't pre-latch and you can't get in front of the ball carrier. So the person with the ball has to be the spearhead, basically.
Yeah.
And once the contacts happen, you can slip up and clean out the tackler. Yeah. But the initial impact has to be with the ball carrier at the spearhead.
Shoulder muscle.
It's a very fine art.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there'd be many examples where slightly the latcher has, but you'd have to slow it down and pick it up. But it's an area that they've tried to adjust, but certainly becoming, I think that law's been tested.
Yeah.
In terms of, especially the pre-latch.
If you're a defender then, when you tackle them, does it immediately become a maul? If you don't go to ground, the three of you there, they're holding on, is it suddenly a maul, or, then...
Well, you will see some players try and stack, but I think when there's a latch, it's very dangerous. You would need 2 or 3 to know what you're trying to do, because if you tried to do it individually, you'd get taken potentially over the line, which is fine because you can get the line dropout. But if you get dominated in that collision, it's quite easy. So it would have to be a call that you'd work in. We always used to say you work in threes, so you got the main and the guy inside out.
And I think also, like, defensive, you probably want to chop that person as well, because obviously if the latcher goes off his feet, then it's obviously then it's a penalty. Game. So I guess there is a bit of gamesmanship in and around how you want to try and prevent that. So being able to chop tackle and being able to maybe if it's a cue that you've probably seen with a latching team, hey, can you have a look at the guy that's latching because he's off his feet and killing our opportunity to be able to go for the ball or slow down the ball. So but yeah. To be honest, sometimes I always use kind of 200 kg versus 100 kg was kind of the mindset of why you would do it.
Yeah, well, it was 4 legs versus 2 as well. Yeah. That's how it was coached to us, is if you get 4 legs against 2, what's going to win? Sometimes, even if you had 4 legs defensively against some 2 legs of South Africans, it may be a challenge, but you get the idea of it. I do think as well, like, if you're feeling like the rule's not being reffed, you've got to be theatrical.
Yeah.
In terms of, like, you've got to hit the latcher and go, I can't get to him, ref. And as long as that guy doesn't miss the tackle and he goes through. It's like when you get hit in the head, like, I'm not saying go full football mode, but if you want things to change, and you have to, we talked about sort of that captain ref management. Well, you have to sort of be theatrical to get the attention if you want it to adjust in game.
But you don't want to do that on your own line. You do that a little bit further away because you make a big risk.
If depends how big you are and strong. Really, it comes down to mass. If you can do it and still get the job done, then, which I would say most Springbok forward could.
Because I think Malcolm Marx, the Italians actually scored with Malcolm Marx maybe doing a similar thing, decision-making and not getting it right. So, I think that was a perfect example in terms of being able to maybe not getting that individual detail right, considering what the defence was.
Don't highlight any of my boys' mistakes.
Me and Malcolm can have that kind of
highlight.
Sorry,
He's
Malcolm.
Perfect.
Mate.
He's 10 out of 10.
He is, but if you do get it right, you get a try.
I really want that golf game when he's over here. So.
He's not far away, boy. He's not far away.
He knows.
Maybe I won't have the golf game after telling that. Sorry, mate. You and Jippa can go.
Next week, we've also got another thing coming up for you on Sky, and that's Sonny Bill Williams versus Paul Gallen in his latest boxing match. We will have Sonny Bill Williams on the show. Jippa and I sat down a couple of weeks ago and had a good chat with Sonny about this, about the fight, about rugby, about all sorts of things. So next week, special guest Sonny Bill Williams within the show as well. So make sure you keep an eye out for that. Thank you, boys.
Thank you.
Great to have boys in the studio all together. It's been bloody good. We'll see you all next week. Thank you very much to Ashley and Martin supporting the show. Thank you very much as well to all of you for writing in and being involved. Send us an email to aotearoa rugbypod@sky.co.nz, and we will see you next week. Mā te wā.